Well, welcome everyone. Appreciate you attending today, and hopefully we're going to show you something that maybe you have not seen before, and that you'll find a lot of value in. So let's start by me just giving you a little background on who DTech Apps is, and then I'll talk also about some of the problems that we hear and that we see around forms automation and what the solution is today using one of our applications called Doc Integrator. So let's go ahead and kick it off for the next slide. Great. So we've been building DTech Apps. We've been building certified applications on the ServiceNow platform for over 5 years. Some of you may be familiar with our flagship product, which is Tasker, an enterprise task management application or enterprise work management application. But effectively, we built Tasker to really satisfy a void in the ServiceNow platform, which was how does someone address dynamic or ad hoc tasks? These are the types of things that hit your inbox every day that you're trying to track. And you usually are using email, quite frankly, or maybe somebody is transferring all of the tasks into a giant spreadsheet or creating an app in SharePoint, to try to track this, some kind of list. So what we did is we knew that was a very big problem. And so we wanted to provide an application that could get people out of email and give them visibility into tracking that particular task throughout the entire process. So if you're tasking somebody or a team and someone hasn't responded, you have visibility, you can reassign it, you can subtask on the fly, really dynamic in nature. And quite frankly, we feel that's the way probably 85–90% of employees are working in an organization. There's a smaller percentage which are ServiceNow power users that kind of live inside the application. So, but we're actually going to talk today and focus on Doc Integrator and its subcomponents, Doc Generator and Doc Flow. So we actually created Doc Integrator a number of years ago because we saw a void in the way that ServiceNow connected to SharePoint. So we wanted to make sure that there was seamless integration so that you could access any document from within any ServiceNow application, but those documents never left SharePoint. So they never touched ServiceNow. You could upload documents directly into SharePoint and also have an easy way to facilitate digital signatures and routing. And that's really where the next piece comes in and what we're going to focus on today with Doc Generator and Doc Flow. So Doc Generator is all about forms automation. We're going to try to talk about how easy that is. And then once you automate forms, how do you route those forms for approval and digital signatures if necessary, all the while having full visibility into that process. So let's take a look at some of the problems that we hear and we have seen through the work we've done with our customers. First off, automating forms can be expensive, right? It can be weeks to build maybe a simple form. It could be months if you're building something more complex. And if you've got a lot of routing and you have to build workflow into that, then of course, App Engine licenses come into play. Also, keeping track of forms can be confusing. Where are your forms located? For example, if you're in a form, but you have to digitally sign something, do you have to open up another application? And are you using multiple screens and that application opens up in a browser window? So it can be a little bit troublesome trying to kind of follow the process when you've got multiple things going on at one time. And data entry, if you're pushing, data entry to humans, right? There's manual errors are always going to be a possibility. So we would like to get away from having people to do this over and over and over again and fill out these forms, and then upload them into the system. And on the PII side, when you're downloading and uploading documents, it's very difficult to manage when you have duplicates that are stored on multiple systems. So that's something that we're going to want to try to address. And then one of the biggest things, tools, applications that you use for electronic or digital signatures can be very expensive. I would ask you the question, how much are you spending on digital signature software that's only being used by a small amount of people? We have customers that had gone into enterprise agreements with these types of tools. They spend a lot of money, yet only to be used by a handful of people. And then lastly, if you're building those custom applications, those automating those forms, and you're building a custom app, we know that those are costly to maintain, right? Who was the person that developed it a couple of years ago? Have they moved on to another part of the agency or to the organization? Or are they even with the organization anymore? So there are certainly some limitations or some problems that are associated with that. So let's take a look now at what we hope will be a solution to many of these problems using the DocFlow capabilities within Doc Integrator. Well, first, we're going to show you how easy it is to automate hundreds of forms, thousands of forms that do not need App Engine licenses. And I think this will save you time and money. And we push that form, that automation, to the business user. We're not hitting up IT every time, creating a big backlog of what needs to be done. We're gonna make this simple enough that a business user can automate those forms. And we're also going to simplify that forms management process, right? We're going to provide the end user a single pane of glass. David's going to show you that today, how easy it is to automate that form and then route that form for approvals and signatures and be able to see everything that's going on from a single location. And I spoke about human errors always being, a possibility when you're filling out your own forms. When you use Doc Integrator, once the form is created, we're going to show you how you can auto-populate that form with data stored in any ServiceNow table so that we know we get it right. And on the first slide, if you recall, I spoke a little bit about leveraging the power of SharePoint and using Doc Integrator so that the documents always remain inside of SharePoint, but you can take advantage of all the collaborative capabilities that SharePoint offers, including things like co-editing documents. And plus, if you're using SharePoint, you no longer have to worry about version control. So we eliminate, the uploading, downloading, storing documents in multiple locations. We're really going to streamline that process, and we'll show you that today. One of the biggest things I talk about is the high cost of digital software applications. But if you're using Doc Integrator, you're going to see in David's demo how you can leverage the free Adobe Reader application as an example for all your digital signature needs, allowing you to either decrease perhaps or maybe even eliminate expensive software licenses in your organization that are not being used. And finally, we all know the value of a COTS application because we maintain it. We deliver the product updates. We deliver the enhancements. Remember, as you kind of go through this demo, Doc Integrator is a certified application, so it functions exactly the same way as a native ServiceNow application. It's designed to be plugged into your ecosystem in a matter of minutes, not weeks, not months. So you can really start taking advantage and seeing value immediately. So David, let's show all of our guests a little bit of what Doc Integrator can do.
So as Brian mentioned, this is all about forms automation, and there's going to be 3 different flavors. First being the public sector, state and local side. So some of you may know that as PSDS, Public Sector Digital Services, in which any constituent, right, makes a portal request within this single landing page, and we'll see how that works with the forms. Then the second one will be within a portal, but for internal employees within an organization and how that routes. And also we can auto-populate data, as Brian mentioned, with data in ServiceNow. And lastly, we can trigger this process anywhere and everywhere you can trigger something in ServiceNow. So we're going to look at someone on the back end within a record, could be an HR record, a CSM, an ITSM record, and how you can also start this process. So a few different flavors, but at the end of the day, it's all about standardized forms. So as just mentioned in the first part, it's all about constituents easily submitting standard forms, but then having all of those approval and signature processes that are facilitated on the back end, so we don't have to worry about that. And one thing to mention before we hop in is many organizations have manual business processes. We've heard pen and paper or sending out SharePoint links, or they have expensive custom-built solutions for one form. We can see and empower customers for any and all forms. So what we're looking at right now is the government service portal. I'm a constituent in the state of Texas, so I come here into my landing page for anything that I need. So this could be, right, missed recycling. Someone didn't take my garbage this morning, reporting a lost pet, abandoned vehicle, a tree fell in front of my house. Can someone please remove that? So any typical public service that is needed. But again, we're going to focus on forms. So as a constituent in the state of Texas, we want to easily fill out a form and get back to our day-to-day. The use case we're going to look at is following all the necessary steps to place a child in our custody. So what we're looking at, for those familiar, is this is the formal name of the form. We'll just call this placement authorization for ease. So this is one easy experience where that constituent, that end user, can come in and pull down the file, right, because they don't have to actually find where the form lives. This can be directly from the website, from the government website. So as I pull this over from the other screen, we see this is the pre-existing form. We are not recreating it. And the value here as well is we are using that free Adobe Reader that Brian was mentioning. That is the only piece of software that is needed to actually perform these processes from a constituent's perspective. So we can populate all this information if, we'll see later, for those users that live in ServiceNow, right, they're employees, we can auto-populate that data. But just for this purpose, right, we would have to manually populate it, but everything still is electronic. We do not have to print this out and fill out that document. Scrolling all the way to the bottom, we have the digital signature blocks. So this is just all of the approvals that need to be followed. You could always have a e-signature, an electronic signature, kind of like the scribble that you can see on the left side. But for many government organizations, you would need a digital signature. So let's say we are Adam, we are filling out this form, declaring that we'll be the caregiver, all through free Adobe Reader, easily putting our stamp on this file. This lives on our local desktop, right? You don't need any complex software, just free Adobe Reader. And from there, we can upload this document back into the system and fire it off. So before we do so, there's a lot of magic behind the scenes that actually takes this request and sends it to the appropriate parties. So as simple as that, our job is done as the citizen constituent of the state of Texas. We fire this off. We'll talk about this a little later as well, this case that was created. So we're going to switch hats now into an internal employee's perspective. So this would be a caseworker working on this file, and we'll select it on the bottom left there. So this just came into our queue. We're going to see all of that different work that we have to do, the chain of command and the specific instructions. Just note, this would be someone at the organization, right, in this case, state of Texas, that would actually be filling out the remainder of this form and approving. In terms of how to navigate here, if you are a heavy ServiceNow user, you can navigate to our application just like all of the other ones, the ITSMs, the CSMs of the world, because as Brian mentioned before, we are a scoped certified app on the store. So this is that single pane of glass for any approval. So let's say you're an approver, you're an employee, in this case, right, the caseworker, you're a manager or an executive. You want everything to be centralized, making your life easier. We are not a ServiceNow user, a heavy ServiceNow user in this case. We'll receive an email, click on the link, and be prompted into this screen, where on the left side, this is all of the work that is in our plate. We're not having to bounce around between email. You can also see the chain of command. So who has it in their on their plate, whether it's individual or a group, and when is it due, right? This is sometimes ambiguous within email or spreadsheets. And lastly, we are heavily entrenched within the ServiceNow ecosystem. We're going to talk about SharePoint. We are also heavily entrenched in the Microsoft system. So for those organizations that are using Teams, you can easily collaborate and send out these links through this experience as well. And on the right side, we can tailor custom instructions per step, so per individual or per group in the process. We can make this as simple and easy as possible, so you're not having to scroll up and down in parts of the form. I've heard examples where there's 3 pages of instructions for a 2-page form. So now let's get into the middle, the crux of what we're talking about, a forms automation. So from that end user's perspective, that constituent, they uploaded the file, and now this magically gets put into SharePoint because we have that seamless integration within the SharePoint product. So even though this looks like it lives in ServiceNow, it fully resides in SharePoint. And this allows us to leverage all of the core capabilities, such as locking down PII and versioning. From our perspective, all we have to do is bring this down to our desktop via OneDrive. So you don't actually have to download it. It's always on your, brought down via OneDrive, which syncs directly to SharePoint. Review the information that was put in, and everything looks good. We can apply our digital signature. For those organizations, those government organizations on this call, if you do have a PIV or CAC for credentialing, this is free Adobe Reader, so you can use those as well. And really, as simple as that, once we mark this complete, it will move to the next individual or group in the process, and we can now go about our day and hitting on all of the other tasks that we need. To wrap this first use case up, there's many ways to track and centralize this information in ServiceNow. So we're coming back to the constituent's perspective, right? You can always communicate. This is a case that is generated within the customer service management, within the CSM application. So you can always communicate with those internal employees, right, within the state of Texas. So this helps that, cross communication. For the purpose of today, we're going to look at this case that is created. So that was 65. So now we're transitioning back into the experience of anyone that's working on the, let's say, customer service agent side of the state of Texas. And what we're looking at right now is CSM and Workspace. This functions anywhere and everywhere within the ServiceNow platform. So this is Doc Integrator. This is what doc flow that forms automation is based on. So you can see where it is in the process, having that visibility. And if we easily open this file, you'll see the digital signatures that were just applied a few moments ago. And why is this so important? It's because we are always working on the most up-to-date version, and that's because the modern version is always stored in SharePoint, and we can always revert back to a previous version if needed. So that concludes the first use case for those PSDS, those state and local individuals on this call. before transitioning into an internal employee, really from any organization. So in the second part, even though this looks similar, it is a very different experience. So before we were someone that is not an employee of the organization, this would be from an internal employee's perspective. So they come into the portal for any type of requests, IT related, my laptop broke, I got locked out of my account, any FAQs from knowledge articles, so standard ServiceNow information, where within the Employee Center Pro portal can function in the standard SP, ServiceNow Service Portal, or anywhere else within the platform. The really neat note is you can see all of these forms. So in the last few months, I've automated over 35 forms, and this is because instead of creating an application per form, the way that we handle this is we create a framework so that you can automate any and all forms in an easy manner. Right, so definitely speeding up that time to value and just making it easier for everyone, including the users that are going to be filling out these forms. Within the internal employees perspective, a very common form that we hear about is certification of training. So a current employee comes in, has to fill out this SF-182. We are prompted with a highly configurable form. So for those that are very familiar with ServiceNow, all of this information can be highly tailored to your processes. We're just focusing on the two main areas of information, one being the individual that is requesting this form. And this matters because, as Brian was talking about before, any information within ServiceNow, in this case associated to the user, can be placed automatically in the form, making our lives easier from this end user's perspective. And even more so, we don't have to worry about data entry errors, typing in an extra @ into your email, messing up the phone number, and having this process started again. And the other piece is the form itself. So all of that framework is built in behind the scenes. Once we fire this off, you'll see how all of this information gets auto-populated into the form and routed to the appropriate individuals or groups. So just like before, right, this is going to be a very common theme of coming to our single pane of glass. On the left side, we see all of the different forms that are in our queue, right, that are on our plate. Just like before, if you are a heavy ServiceNow user, access it just like every other application. Many individuals, especially executives that we speak to, they come in here and at the end of the day, they go down their to-do list and knock out all of their items. So within this specific example, all of the information, right, was just auto-populated into the form. We can see who is getting the task, in terms of the chain of command. So this is actually going to the supervisor of Able, the individual filling it out. They read all of the instructions, and the file, right, even though it looks like it lives in ServiceNow, it fully resides in SharePoint. Just like before, without having to download, save, and upload, bring this document down to your desktop via OneDrive, right, for those organizations heavily utilizing the Microsoft suite. Everything is populated as you need. You might have to add any additional information that might be a little bit more custom. And from there, right, adding our digital signature with our pivot CAC if needed for security purposes. And it's as simple as that. Once we fire this off, it will go to the supervisor group, and someone can pick that up off the plate and proceed with it, right? Really just streamlining this entire process. So this was the second way to look at it from an internal employee's perspective, coming into the portal, right? That's their landing page, making any type of request. So in this last part of the demonstration, sometimes things are going to be kicked off right through the portal, through an end user's experience. Sometimes things are going to come to the back end, and one of these fulfillers, could be a CSM agent, HR agent, IT asset manager. They handle these processes. So what we're looking at right now is a HR record. This is in platform, just for those that are a little bit more technical on this call. We function anywhere and everywhere, so platform, portal, workspace, and any application, HR, CSM, or even custom applications for our customers. So we're in this HR record, and this is very common now, people asking for telework. Maybe this HR agent was contacted via email, phone, maybe via Teams, and they log this, this record into the system. And as simple as clicking this one button, this UI action, we fire off a telework process for this individual, making everyone's lives easier. So just another way to trigger this process again, since we are based on the ServiceNow platform, we leverage all of those core capabilities, such as embedding in all of the applications. So now this is that last part of we just triggered off this task. Someone requested telework. We can see, again, just like before, chain of command, everything that we need to do. Simple as that. Open this document without having to download or use any custom software, where you're just using free Adobe Reader. This individual has information in ServiceNow. Great. So that means we have all this already filled out. Fill in whatever else is needed. And now we digitally sign this document. So the key here is, we're just going down this list in one enhanced and centralized experience. Approvers, whether you're an employee, manager, or executive, you can sign all of the standardized forms without having to sift through many emails or bounce around, because once you're in, you're in. Now to conclude with reporting, so this is just another way to visualize some of the data, We had that single pane of glass a few moments ago that showed everything on our plate or our group's plate. We are based on the ServiceNow platform, so we do inherit all of the reporting as well. This is just one way to visualize what is out there holistically. So someone maybe from the organization managing any and all forms, just overseeing that. Another way to slice and dice this data is, what do I have to do? So what did people assign to me that now I have to fill out? And on the flip side, what have I assigned to others that I need them to fill out? So you can see we have something due today. We have things upcoming this week. We don't want to be in this place where we are overdue. So maybe we can be more proactive, see what's upcoming, and ask the individual that needs to sign. This is due within the next few days. Can you please address that? So this helps you be a little bit more proactive and provide some context and visibility. The one thing to add is, from hearing from our customers, the reports were very helpful, but it doesn't allow them to take as much action as they would like. So you could always drill down into here and, let's say, change assignment groups, change priorities, but we took a different approach, and now we dedicated a true management screen for those that are overseeing large amounts of approvals. So again, we can slice and dice this data. You can see what is assigned to you, your group. So this just allows you to have really that visibility. When we talk about management, this is really where the solution shines. So we can see everything that is upcoming or overdue, and from here easily, without having to bounce around to different places or drill into records, accept assignments, maybe change the due dates that are required. And just like that, we were able to amend this data and truly have a handle on all of the tasks, all of the approvals that we have to do.
We did get a question in the queue. little confusion over in the demo. So the question was in your last demo before the reports, did you say the quote, these forms are housed on OneDrive once signed? If you could just clarify about where the files are being stored and accessed and how that's working again, and our storage integration capabilities with Doc Integrator.
Sure. It's always stored in SharePoint. The way that it functions is when you open an app, which would in this case be free Adobe Reader, it would bring it down via OneDrive, but OneDrive syncs to SharePoint. So it's always within the Microsoft ecosystem, but it's stored in SharePoint. And this functions for, and we have a connection for on-prem SharePoint, so 2013, 16, and 19. And for many customers that are adopting SharePoint Online, we also support that. So it's always within Microsoft, it's always within SharePoint.
We've got another question. We'll start with the first part. How are the workflows created for routing actions to individuals and groups?
Sure. So whoever asked that question, I'm happy to also have a follow-up demo to really get in the weeds. But we have a process called DocFlow definitions where you assign the routes. These could be based on really anything. Could be individuals, could be groups within ServiceNow. If you want to get fancy, you can also script and dot walk and do those kinds of processes. But we have a process behind the scenes for a very easy way to essentially make those frameworks and manage them. So again, kind of just to summarize, I created about 35 of them as a solution consultant, not as a developer. But to whoever asked that question, happy to go more in deep during a demo if you would like to set that up.
Perfect. And now the second part of the question, how many DoD forms, the Army, Air Force, are available for use in routing? So I know you've integrated quite a few forms, and for the most part, just to simply answer this question, he's taken the time to create tons and tons of government and defense forms into DocFlow. So Dave, I'll just let you talk through all of the different forms that you've already done. Dave is not a developer by any means. He's more of a power user in the case of creating these. So he's not hard coding anything. He's just taken PDFs. So I'll let you explain what you've done here in this dashboard, Dave.
Sure. You covered most of it. So as mentioned before, automated about 35 forms. I think 12 to 15 of them are DD forms. I have DD, SF, OPM. Some customers have standard forms, so they are not ones that you find on the website. They are standard to those organizations. So again, any form that we can bring in, we bring in the original PDF, so we are not recreating it. As long as we can bring it in and there's fillable fields, we can map them and have it signed digitally. So just for kind of perusing, I'm just scrolling up and down so you can see all of the forms that have been automated within the last few months. We're happy to do custom demos. So you saw those forms that I've automated, but there might be some that you're struggling with to either automate or just having manual processes, maybe pen and paper and scanning. Happy to have a demo, set something up and reach out to us, set something up, and we'll demo your custom form.
Yeah, and I would just conclude by letting everyone in the audience, just reminding them that Doc Integrator is licensed based on the number of users. So when we created this application, we wanted something to be affordable that you could push across the enterprise. So once the application is licensed for the number of users, it can then be implemented or integrated into SPM, CSM, ITSM, whatever that ServiceNow application or as many of the ServiceNow applications you have in your ecosystem. There is no additional cost to do that. So we have the forms automation, but you also can take advantage of all of the SharePoint connectivity for those that are leveraging SharePoint and want to use that as your document management system. So with that said, if there are no other questions, thank you very much for coming to the webinar today, and reach out directly to us, and we're happy to get back to you quickly. Thanks.